So this is your Yes is Needed podcast, and this is going to be our first series of many more called the Why Not Tour. So me and my friend Wendy Hyatt started this Why Not Tour. We started the mentality January 1st, and we started this, like, we jokingly started like, why not? And so we started like jumping these competitions that was way out of our league and just be like, why not? And so the last couple of days I've been really meditating on this doing a why not tour series. And Harry Haladin was my first one that I've been thinking about for a while. So tonight, like 20 minutes ago, I said, hey Harry, do you want to like do a podcast with me? And his first response was, why not? I was like, crazy, that's what the series is called. And so I said, well, what about the next 15 minutes? So now we're here. So a little bit about Harry. I've known him for a long time. We were stationed in Japan together.
We didn't know each other then.
We did not know each other, but we were in the same command. Well, this is Sasebo, Japan. Yeah. And then we were working together in New Jersey, and he was my chief. And so we've been always kept in contact. And recently through social media, he's been like wild. He's been like so cool. Like I'm so inspired by his response, his reactions. How much did you weigh? What was your heaviest?
204.
He was 204. And then
that was October.
That was October of 2021. And I've always known Harry. He's like, so I got out of the Navy in 2012. So I knew Harry in 2010. And Harry is the glory days. Harry has always talked about wrestling. He talks about wrestling. He's used to be a wrestler, and that's all he did. He just talked about wrestling. That part I knew about him. But then suddenly he started. How much did you lose?
I was 167.8 last week.
Okay, so he lost a lot of weight. Okay, he lost he lost all this weight and started conditioning to compete again. And I'm like, oh, okay. And how old are you, Harry?
42.
You're 42.
43, yep.
And then you're competing against what is your age group?
My age group, it depends. They have like different age
groups.
They
have open and they have masters.
Yeah, so there's not a lot of
masters.
For my actual masters or veterans, right? There's just not a lot.
So just for anyone doesn't know, open is from like 18 to like whatever, and like, then masters
pretty much unlimited, like 54, 60. Yeah.
So you're the open class is from 18 to unlimited, and then masters, depending on what sport, is either 35 and plus or 40 plus.
And depending in the age groups, you were born, different categories or whatnot. Yeah.
So in Harry's sport, there's not a lot of 40-year-olds that are competing. So every time he competes, he's against 18s and 20-year-olds, youngsters. And so he's out there, man. He's out there on the mat, like against these young folks. And so why did you go back and where did this suddenly come from?
Well, over time, everything over time, kind of like your journey. You inspired me a lot, believe it or not. I'm gonna get all cry and stuff. Yeah.
It's okay.
So no, no, but seriously, following your journey and just life, we have our experiences, we have life, and it gets you right. And basically a series of events over the years, different assignments that I've had, different things doing in my life. My brother lost a battle to mental health. February 19th of 2019, and he was 34. And then before that, 2018, I had a neck surgery, C5, C6 disc replacement. So I had fake discs in my neck, which is pretty cool. They don't go off the airport, but I try every time. But yeah, so that was a big thing. Obviously, stress on the body, all that stuff. The mental health aspect, my brother and his loss, and then it just adds up. My other brother passed away, my youngest brother, 36th birthday, December 16th of this past year. Life hits you, you know, and you have to do something to keep your sanity. Right.
Right.
So just a whole series of events throughout the years. My wife quit her job a couple of years ago and wanted to go back to school for a second master's degree. Left a lot of time, a lot of voids. Anybody that has a desire to get another 2 master's degrees, right, or whatever, you know, that whole relationship becomes distant. At least ours did, because you dedicate your to a purpose, right? You're dedicating everything to a purpose. So where you're giving on, where you're taking on one thing, you got to give something up, which left a whole lot of time. Again, history of events and stress, and you know, my way of dealing with things throughout life is to keep my hands moving. You got to do stuff, and that might not be the right answer to things, but the more I'm doing, it takes my mind off of thinking about things I don't want to think about. Right.
Right.
Yeah, you're right. I wrestled my whole life. I started in first grade. Like when I was going into first grade, I was 4 years old. Wrestled through high school. Never won a state tournament. Nothing like that. It was very competitive. We were in the toughest district in the country when I was in high school. And then I joined the Navy. You know, I finally had to start figuring out life and getting into all the things that I probably shouldn't have. But hey, it is what it is. That's what makes us who we are. And, you know, joined the Navy right out of high school, 18. And then I was like, oh, wow, they got a team out in San Diego. And I started practicing with them. And one of the guys that were there was like, hey, if you can ever compete again, would you? I'm like, yeah, sure. Why not? Right?
Wow, shocker.
And I was young then, right? Like now we're like old, but I was young then. And I deployed to Ketchikan, Alaska for a couple months. And I came back, and then there was a message that was sent that for me to go and participate in the tryouts for this Navy wrestling team. And I'm like, oh, wow. Okay. Be at the gym at 5 o'clock in the morning, right? This was at like midnight. Okay. So
Thanks for the heads up.
Well, apparently this was out, but you know how things are, and there's not a lot of communication when people don't want people to do things, right? So
they let you know as a courtesy, but like you really have to dig and say, oh, like you really want me there. Not really,
right.
but we offered it to you.
Oh, this came 2 weeks ago. You didn't get the memo. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was like, that's cool. So luckily there were some good chiefs that I had, really good chiefs. And back then, it's not like the Navy is today for anybody that's in the Navy, where you have young sailors that see their chiefs and senior chiefs, and everybody all the time, leadership. Back then, you didn't see your chief. The only time is if you screwed up and you were in trouble. And I had a lot of people looking out for me. It was good. That's probably one of the reasons I'm still in the Navy today, is because I had a lot of good people looking out for me in my best interest and things like that, right? So they're like, hey, do you want to do this? Blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, they're not going to let me. Chief so-and-so is not going to let me do this. Don't worry about him, right? Kind of in the back of my mind, I remember, I'm kind of like, man, maybe they'll say no, right? And I won't have to do this. But yeah, I'm a fool. So we go into the CO's, the commanding officer's office in the morning at like 7. He's like, hey, you want to do this? And I'm like, yeah. He's like, okay, well, you're late. Well, damn, they called me on it. Okay, cool. So I went, started off immediately, like they did like figured out who was who. And then we immediately did like an 8-mile run up these mountains in San Diego. Yeah, like people throwing up, and it was a mess. And you couldn't like walk at the end of the first day, and they were weeding people out, right? And I made this team, and I was like, oh, shit. So I wrestled for the Navy on and off for about 4 years. So that was pretty cool. And then I broke some ribs and said, oh man, I'm young and wrestling's not going to get me anywhere in life. And looking long term, I focused on my career. So that's
now,
what I
do you have any regrets having that mentality back then? Or do you wish that you shifted just a little bit and see how much further it could have gone?
Nope. because I wouldn't be where I'm at today. I wouldn't have what I have today. Sports are great. Things are great. But the reality is they're not going to get you everywhere. Every kid's going to be in the NFL or on a baseball team. How many of them really are? Doesn't matter how good they are. It's reality. You have to be a realist.
Mm-hmm.
You know, ooh, you can do anything you want in life. Okay. You know, we learn this as we get older, right?
But to be fair, like you are kind of like doing it though. Like you're like, I can do it and I'm going to do it. So
Well, you're right. You're right. I had all this time, all this stuff. I was a little bit depressed about a lot of things, and like I said, the mental health aspect
so
fucks you up.
you lost your only two brothers that you had.
Yeah, only two.
And so then you took that emotion and you're like, you know what? I'm going to, what was the initial thing that you came across that made you say, I'm going to go back to wrestling?
So I've been thinking about it for a while. You know, I think as humans we always there's things that we just know. They're part of life. You've done something for so long, you had an interest in something for so long. Um I don't know. There's just things we do, right? And in the back of our heads we know. There's always something that you fall back to, whether it's a bad relationship with somebody, whether it's pick something. There's always a fallback that's in your heart and in your mind, right? I think that's a fair statement. I don't know. So with that being, I mean, I wrestled for 22 years. I'm 42. That, like, if you do the math, that's like a part of my life. I got a Pennsylvania education. I can't count, but that's a large portion, right? So um, so yeah, just taking everything. Like I said, I was depressed. A lot of the mental health aspect, the emotional aspect, and I mean, as we know, COVID hit, and we can say what we want about COVID, but the Olympics were delayed, and they don't really televise Olympic wrestling. It's not like a super televised sport, right? I think more of the powerlifting, like, you know, you're into even bodybuilding, it's not really televised, right?
Correct.
You don't see it too much. Um, but they were playing the Olympics in Japan on TV, and I was watching it. I was so inspired by our Olympic team, the men's and women's. The women's Olympic team inspired me the most out of all the competition that I watched. And my wife wasn't allowed to watch TV when I was watching Olympic wrestling. And that was how it was. She was in school most of the time anyway, so it didn't matter. But I was glued. And even when I was at work, you know, I was doing the whole cell phone thing where people are on TikTok and playing their video games. I'm sitting there in the meetings, like, on mute, like making sure government work gets done. But I was so inspired. I said, you know what? Maybe this is what I need to do. I need to do something else. I need to get my mind right. I need, you know, so I'm fat.
So I want to jump on that real quick because I talked to a lot of people, and including myself, when I started running, I'm like, this is so discouraging. So
that's why they got cars.
So, so you had a history of being great at wrestling, and
I
then
don't think I was great.
Harry, you were part of the Navy team. Okay, you're all right. So you good. All right, you're good enough to be part of the Navy team. So, but then there massive amount of years passed by, and like you said, you had gained a massive amount of weight, and then suddenly you're inspired, and you're like, you know, I'm gonna fucking do this, and you jump back in it.
Kind of like that.
And what was your first initial thought when you started conditioning again? Were you like, what am I doing? Like,
so
I'm too fat. Like, I'm too out of shape. Did those thoughts cross your mind? Because I have this conversation with people all the time. Like, me too. Like, I'm not as heavy. It was okay. Can you share those? Because that's the part I don't think most people talk about.
Yeah. So the mental health aspect, I'm going to talk a little bit about, because it's a huge thing, right? I mean, we know it's a huge thing. So after Tamara Mensah-Stock won her gold medal, I was sitting there and I was like, man, you know what? I think I'm going to do this. So I told my wife, Tammy, you know, I said, I think I'm going to start wrestling. She's like, yeah, okay. Yeah, okay. she never knew me as an athlete. She, you know, or
Fair,
anything like that.
fair. Okay.
You know, hey, I was the guy that sits there with a beer, watching TV, listening to whatever, right? You know, just hanging out. And she's like, yeah, okay. So she thought I was joking. I was serious. But I mean, you know how I am. I guess it's hard to believe sometimes. So I was like, well, shit. So we were sitting there, and she's like, I don't know if you should do that. You have like titanium discs in your neck. Is that good? Like, you were almost paralyzed a couple of years ago. I'm like, I'll be fine. I'll go. I was like, I'll go get a doctor's appointment and see, right? Get a checkup or whatever. So I went and was telling the doctor everything, and you know, what's the purpose? I said, I think I'm going to start wrestling again. She's like, Senior Chief, I think that would be an amazing idea. I'm like, huh?
You know what's funny? I'm so glad that you said that. Like, we go with the intention, like we want something, but along the way, there's a small part where we hope that we run into someone or something that goes, I don't think you should do it. You're
That's
right.
in the back of my mind, I was hoping she was going to be like, yeah, no, you shouldn't do this. But she's like, Senior Chief, I think that would be an amazing idea. I think you need this in your life for your mental health, your emotional health, and your physical health. Your blood pressure's high, all this stuff. It'll probably be good for you. And I'm like, now I'm starting to make excuses, right? We go into this thing where we're looking for an out, right?
Uh-huh.
So I was like, I have titanium discs in my neck. I was almost paralyzed. She's like, that's okay. You know the good thing about being 42? I'm like, no, I get an extra candle? What? Like, she's like, if it hurts, just don't do it. I'm like, no shit.
Okay.
Okay. And then I'm like, and then I'm trying to think in my head, like, what else can I bring up?
Like, you weren't quick enough.
Right. Like, I read your book. We've known each other for years. We've had a lot of talks, and we've done things, you know, that led us to where we are today, right? So yeah, but that was me. Reading your book and a lot of chapters made me reflect on a lot of things in life. So thank you for that. But yeah, so I'm looking for a way out. And then she's like, yeah, this will be good. Your blood pressure's high. I know you're not going to take medicine. I'm like, no, I don't need any pills. So, you know, it is what it is. But then I was like, okay, challenge accepted. She said to do this. I was hoping she would say no and give me an out, but she didn't. Now I have to do it.
Like, she like cornered your excuses.
Absolutely. So my command master chief, he's like, you're an ass. I'm like, yeah, I know. He's like, but whatever you need, we're with you. My commanding officer's like, ha ha ha, ha, really? I'm like, yeah. He's a trip. You'd like him. You'd really like him. And then my XO's like, Senior Chief, I don't think this is good. You know, you shouldn't do this. You should reevaluate. You're not a young whippersnapper anymore. So I said, okay, shit. So I start looking up everything. I apply for my license, my card, so I can compete again. Yeah, fine, easy. Submit my medical waiver, all this crap, right? And I get it. I'm like, okay, well, I guess can't find anything, right? I'm looking through my closet, can't find anything. I still got boxes packed from years. You know how it is. So I went and bought a pair of shoes, and I'm like, okay, what next? Now I start looking for like clubs and things like that. Where can I train? What can I do? Are there like a bunch of old geezers that still do this? So I found some, and I joined, and I went and checked things out. And at this age, a lot of places don't want to take someone older, for one, as a liability.
Mm-hmm.
For two, a lot of people, especially our age, they say they're going to do one thing, and then it's very short-lived.
Mm-hmm.
Right? They
all
quit.
The time.
Yeah, and that's life. It's where we are all at in our individual lives. But that's the thing. I'm like, okay, so now I'm still nervous as shit the whole time about it. I'm nervous now, and I've competed in five tournaments this year, right? And hey, it's cool though. And I'm gonna go into that a little bit. So yeah, so I found all this stuff, and I came back and showed my wife my license, and I got wrestling shoes, and I got all this stuff, and she's like, "You're serious?" Yeah, spent like 120 bucks on a pair of shoes, X amount of dollars for a license. I had to do these courses, to show that I'm not like a pedophile or anything, and all this crazy stuff. So I can work out with people. Yeah, I'm in. I'm in. Okay. So then I start eating healthy, and I'm like, this is bullshit. This is bullshit. I'm eating like these greens for breakfast, and
Yeah,
like
yeah.
I completely curbed my diet. Completely curbed it. I like beer. I stopped drinking beer, which is okay. Not like I need it anyway. But it's just one of those things. And I just completely changed everything. So I was like, okay, first week, easy. I get on the treadmill. I started off like a sissy, right? Quarter mile. So all I did was a quarter mile. I wasn't trying to kill myself. I was trying to like, ooh, how's my body gonna react? And I started doing like 10 push-ups a night, 15 push-ups a night, whatever it was, and I built up. Now I don't do any less than 3.25 miles every day. I do 3.25 miles every day. But when I started, after I got up to a mile, like, and you know this, in the Navy, we're supposed to run 1.5 miles twice a year, push-ups, planks, all this dumb shit, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because we're all in so good a shape in the military. Um,
I'm in better shape now than I was in.
right? So after I got up to a mile, I was actually running, not just like walking, but like running at like 5.0 on the treadmill. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, damn, I'm tired. Yeah.
How many times did your mind like try to convince you like you can quit anytime?
I think the thoughts are still there
Mm-hmm.
because it's like I have nothing to prove to anybody. I'm doing this for me. I'm not doing this for anybody else.
This is where I wanted to get to. So a lot of people be like, where do you get your motivation from? Like, what? What motivation? Like, I fight with myself every single day, every single morning. People think I joke around and say, is today a rest day? Like I say that every single morning when I set my alarm clock for 3:30 because it's like it's not something where I'm like, oh, I'm gonna crush shit this morning. Like, no, I'm like, is today your rest day? Like I entertain, it's like a tug of war, and then I like I'm forced to lean and intentionally and purposely lean on getting up. It's not a natural thing for me.
What, getting up?
Well, getting up to work out.
Yeah, I don't work out in the morning. As much as tomorrow I will, but yeah, I don't work out in the morning. I usually do like 7 o'clock at night. I usually do, and I'll get done between 8 and 9, depending. But I procrastinate, so I got into these podcasts. So I try to refocus my brain, so I'm not thinking about how much things hurt on the treadmill. So I'm a big fan of Johnny Knoxville, or not Johnny Knoxville, Steve-O's podcast. Yeah, I got into these little podcasts, and I'm like, man, this is crazy, man. Yeah, Mike Tyson's podcast. All these weird ones.
I started getting into audiobooks when I'm doing cardio because it's interesting that you say the same thing because like cardio sucks and it's like you just have to get so lost in your mind while you're doing it.
We are
That's
very similar in so many ways, which
yeah.
I think we've learned throughout the years. But I try to watch comedy. I don't think there's enough of laughter in the world. I know I can use it in my life, and I think everybody can. And it's one of those things that just makes things better, right? A little smile and a laugh. But yeah, no, I've at the beginning I was sore. Like I said, I started off super slow. Not trying to prove everything. I'm like, I gotta get my ass back in shape. I gotta be able to move and do things again, right? So still see my willy when I pee in the morning, so I'm good. But like, you know.
So you are very realistic with yourself. You're like, I'm starting slow
Yeah,
because
yeah.
I
So
have nothing to prove.
I toured this wrestling club, and there was like five old dudes, and I'll say old dudes because they're all older than me. Like there's a guy that's 62
Oh.
who you wouldn't guess is 62.
So did
Yeah.
he inspire you?
No, not at all. But I was like, oh shit, these old guys are in here. And I'm watching them, and there's only like two of them, and they were training for the Masters U.S. Nationals this past year. And I was watching them, and I'm like, damn, okay, there were the only two in there, but there was 5 people in there at that time. So I'm like, okay, well, I'll be back next week. They're like, oh, really? I'm like, yeah, I'll be back next week. And they were just cool ass guys, man. You know, you go in there and you meet people and you talk, and they're just cool people, right? Very friendly, whatever. So I went there and I worked out with them for about an hour. And so practice was from 8:30 to 10. I finished up at like 9:30. I went home. I took a shower. And that was in the morning. I'm talking in the morning, 9:30 in the morning. And I was sleeping on the couch by 1 in the afternoon. I was so exhausted. And then I woke up. I woke up and I had bruises everywhere at like 9 o'clock at night. And I'm like, these weren't here this morning. Where did they come from? And then I went to get off the couch, and my legs and everything were so stiff and sore, and I was in pain. At that point, I'm like, what the fuck am I doing? I don't know if I can curse, but hey, whatever. What am I doing? That thought hit me right there, right? And then I'm like, okay. So then I get up in the morning and I make my fancy, crappy greens drink, and I go to work, and everyone's like, are you all right? And I'm like walking around like, oh, I can't move, you know? And then my ex goes, I really don't think you should do this. And everybody's like, okay, whatever. So I was looking, and then I started setting little goals, realistic goals, right? Go back to what I know. So I started setting goals and working towards something. And that's one of the big things that keeps me going. If I don't have something I'm working for nothing. And that to me doesn't make sense. Why am I going to do something with no benefit or outcome?
Mm-hmm.
That just doesn't make sense to me, right? I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying to me it don't make sense.
Right.
So, yeah, I was setting like, okay, at the end of this week, you know what? I even still have a little weight chart. So I started logging shit because I'm so good at that. But yeah, so the first week, it was October 1st, I was 204 pounds. October 10th, I was 200 pounds. I started setting these baby steps, right? The 31st of the month, or 30th of the month, I was 196 and a quarter. So I just started logging. I'm like, okay. Everyone's like, man, you're losing a lot of weight really quick. And I'm like, well, you guys obviously don't know how this works, but when you start moving instead of sitting, you burn calories.
And so you started setting these goals, which that's exactly what I did.
Yeah.
When you were heading towards your first meet, what was going through your mind? Like,
so I was looking for tournaments, and I said, okay, well, I remember I competed in this tournament series like years ago, like when I was on recruiting duty. So there was like a year break when I was wrestling for the Navy, right? And I said, okay, I'm a recruiter and blah, blah, blah. And I got time, which I didn't, but I'm going to get back into this. And so I did. This tournament series was old, right? And they do it every year. And it's mostly kids, mostly younger kids, but they do have open divisions. Most of the people are like 18 to, I don't know, 24 college kids, right? So I was like, okay, I'm going to enter this tournament. I figure all your really good people that age aren't in those tournaments. They're competing at national level and the different like really competitive things. And college was out, and after college, those kids aren't wrestling. They're out partying and being kids, right? So only the serious ones are, and they're not wrestling this little tournament series. So I'm telling these guys at the club, I'm like, yeah, I'm entering this. So you guys want to do it? No, why would I want to go get beat up by a 20-year-old? That makes no sense to me. You're crazy. Why are you doing this? You're not young anymore. I was like, because in order for me to compete, legitimately compete, not just wrestle, but compete against people in my age group, I need to build up to it. So if I can get to where I can hold my own and compete against younger kids, when I wrestle an old man, you watch out. it's training, right?
That's a good mentality.
That was how I processed it and legitimized everything in my head. So my wife came to this first tournament and realized how boring it is when you're sitting around all day long for a total of 1 6-minute match, right? Or however many people are hours before you're. So, but I wrestled my first match against this kid. He was 20 or 21 or something like that. And we went into overtime and I beat him in overtime. And I couldn't breathe. I thought my lungs were just going to like explode out of my chest. So like literally 6 minutes, 20 seconds. That's something like that it was, right? 6.5 minutes, something. I couldn't stand up. All my muscles were stiff, like immediately locked. I couldn't breathe. I'm raspy. I'm coughing. My eyes are like dry, and I'm like, like dying. Like, hold me up. I can't walk. Yeah. Like it was so miserable. But everybody's like, oh my God, you actually won. I'm like, yeah, how'd that shit happen? So and then I wrestled 3 more matches and got killed, right? Okay, whatever. Again, I have nothing to prove to anybody. So this is something I'm doing for me at this point. And
Harry, so
again,
real quick, we got 5 minutes left, but I wanted to jump into that New York tournament that you went, this last one.
Yeah.
So you drove from Virginia. Yeah, you drove from Virginia to upstate New York, right?
Yep, Maryland. Yep.
Okay, and then so you said that you lost all 3 of your matches, but you did. But so I had wrote in your comments, I said, Harry, man, that's still dope what you did. And you said something to me that blew my mind. And I was actually sharing it with my team. You said like I don't learn nothing from winning. I learned everything from losing. Can you just finish the last 5 minutes of that with that mentality?
Yeah, I don't think people actually lose, right? We could say lose, and that's a bad thing. I don't think losing is a bad thing. If you do lose, you're either you have to take something away from it. There is no losing. You win or you learn, right? Short way
I
to
love
say
that.
you win or you learn. And by losing, you're winning. So confusing. That's some deep shit right there, right?
It is,
but
it's true. It's true. Like I show up all the time and I hit last place in all my competitions and I still show up.
Yeah.
And so it's like, it's a different mentality. Like when I was younger, I used to be an all-star and everything. And it's quite the opposite. It's quite the opposite right now. But you get it. And now it just forces you to like pay attention to the smallest things that you've never paid attention to before.
Yep. I get the hell beat out of me, and then I'm like, okay. So, and I'm going to tell you, that was the first super competitive tournament I've wrestled this year. I told myself this year, 2021. So I have some goals, right? 2021, this is all fun for me. It doesn't feel fun, but it's fun for me, right? So I want to go. I want to compete. I want to train. I want to get my weight under control. Get cardio up, all the little things that are really important, but get out there. I want to meet people. I want to learn from people, not learning about the sport. I know the sport, but every time I go out there, win, lose, whatever, I'm learning something, what I need to work on. I'm learning different people's styles, how the different circumstances for everything, different insight. I've learned that I'm clearly the oldest person competing in any of these events against these kids, which is funny because it's very inspiring to me, which helps me, which keeps me motivated, with the people that come up and talk to me after saying, why are you doing this? And, just things like that. Why are you doing this?
And what do you say to them?
I start telling them, like, it's good for you. You got to find something, it's good for you. I start talking a little bit. After I get the shit kicked out of me, I'll go talk to the kid that kicked the shit out of me, and I'll be like, hey man, where do you train? And what do you do? Oh, what college do you go to? Oh, you're a junior at the Coast Guard Academy. Ranked like number 12 in the country right now. That's cool, man. Yeah, so I'm 42. And they're all like, you are super strong. And I'm like, yeah, I don't feel it. I feel like you're way stronger. But you start building that camaraderie, right? I'm learning a lot about myself, and I'm learning a lot about other people, and I'm learning how much I'm not only inspiring myself, but how I'm inspiring other people.
And you are, Harry. You are. Like, it's very radical what you're doing. And that's why I wanted to do this podcast with you, because it's like it's not just wrestling. Like, it's not, I tell people it's never the sport. And it's what you, it's like, it's who you are. People will remember your face and your story more than your numbers. And so that's why I always encourage my team, like, share your story. I promise you, your story is more inspiring than your numbers will ever be. And so I wanted to thank you for jumping on my first Why Not series, because you're definitely on the Why Not tour. You're just jumping on different tournaments and you're like, why not? And so I love it, and I hope I get to see you live in one of your tournaments, because I definitely will be there, and with a hairy face, like, you know. So, but I appreciate you, because it's gonna shut off soon because I didn't upgrade.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Desi. Anytime, always here for you. You know that, and hopefully people are watching. They're not just sitting back sleeping at 10:26 right now. Wednesday night, right?
On a Wednesday night, yeah. So, thank you again.
No problem. Keep doing good things.
Thank you.
All right, later.